Merci, Monsieur le Président. I had not intended to speak to Senator Senior's amendment, but as I listened to her, I wanted to give you the context of what is happening in my home province of Alberta. A couple of weeks ago, in late February, Bruce McAllister, who's the Executive Director of the Office of Premier Danielle Smith, posted the following on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm going to read it verbatim. The people orchestrating this reckless, unsustainable mass immigration into Canada fill me with profound disgust. To deliberately engineer and champion such explosive, unimaginable population growth in your own nation, that's the height of civic irresponsibility. Was it fueled by greed? Did they line their pockets while irrevocably straining our healthcare, education, and social safety nets? Or does their contempt for Canada's core values and traditions drive them to flood our borders with millions from societies not built on the same foundations that have made us thrive? Why import from nations with failed systems when our Judeo-Christian heritage and principles have worked so well here? It's almost like these elites are ashamed of what built this great country. This is a stark reminder of why Albertans, and indeed countless Canadians, harbor deep mistrust towards the Laurentian elite in Ottawa. They seem all too eager to prioritize their agenda over the well-being of the true North, strong and free. Now, I must tell you, as an Albertan, the only Laurentian elites I ever knew were the kids who had more pencil crayons than I did. But I think it is important to understand Mr. McAllister's words as the framing device for what came immediately thereafter, which was Premier Danielle Smith's address to the province, in which she outlined 9 separate referendum questions that Albertans will be asked to answer come October, the first 5 of which dealing specifically with this canard of a huge immigration crisis in Alberta, a province where, as I mentioned the other day, in the last quarter we had a net international migration of 197 people, and where international immigration has been falling sharply ever since 2024. In case you have not been following, as I do, the intricacies of Alberta provincial politics, I'm going to take the liberty of reading into the record the 5 questions that Albertans will be asked to answer to deal with immigration, because this is going to come back to Senator Senior's amendment in just a moment. Question 1. Do you support the Government of Alberta taking increased control over immigration for the purposes of decreasing immigration to more sustainable levels, prioritizing economic migration, and giving Albertans first priority on new employment opportunities? How exactly Albertans would get first priority is unclear. 2. Do you support the Government of Alberta introducing a law mandating that only Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and individuals with an Alberta-approved immigration status will be eligible for provincially funded programs such as health care, education, and other social services? I can tell you, as the daughter of a refugee who came to this country speaking not one word of English at the age of 9 and who received an excellent public education at the Barrhead Elementary School in the not very booming metropolis of Barrhead, Alberta, the idea of denying public education to immigrant and refugee children seems to me a poor public policy choice. Question 3. Assuming that all Canadian citizens and permanent residents continue to qualify for social support programs as they do now, do you support the Government of Alberta introducing a law requiring all individuals with a non-permanent legal immigration status to reside in Alberta for at least 12 months before qualifying for any provincially funded social support programs? Question 4. Assuming that all Canadian citizens and permanent residents continue to qualify for public health care and education as they do now, do you support the Government of Alberta charging a reasonable fee or premium to individuals with a non-permanent immigration status living in Alberta for their and their families' use of the health care and education systems? I guess this doesn't matter if Canadian citizens in Alberta no longer receive public health care. Question 5. Do you support the Government of Alberta introducing a law requiring individuals to provide proof of citizenship, such as a passport, birth certificate, or citizenship card, to vote in an Alberta provincial election? Again, what a red herring of a question. Let it also be said that the Premier of Alberta has already said publicly that she intends to make it necessary that you should say whether you're a Canadian citizen on your provincial driver's license. Now, what does this have to do with Bill C-12, and in specific with Senator Senior's amendment? This was not something that occurred to me until some of us in the Senate were privy to a briefing held by a number of civil society groups and immigration advocacy organizations, including the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, who pointed out that under the provisions of C-12, which Senator Senior's amendment addresses, the Alberta provincial government would have a brand new vector to find out who in the province was and was not a permanent resident, was and was not a citizen, was and was not a legal resident who had a non-permanent status. And this is what concerns me, and this is why I will be supporting Senator Senior's amendment. I suspect that when the government in Ottawa drafted this legislation, it imagined that it was proceeding on the understanding that provinces would act in good faith and that it was safe to share this kind of personal, private information with provincial governments and provincial authorities. Coming as I do from Alberta, I no longer can say that I share that certainty and that conviction. And I think any law that creates a differentiation between a Canadian citizen who is naturalized, like my mother, and a Canadian citizen who was born here opens a very noxious chasm in the fabric of our Canadian society. I look around this room and I see how many of you here, my colleagues, my respected colleagues, some frankly of the most respected citizens in this country, were not born here. How many of you are naturalized Canadian citizens? What does it mean to you that the government should treat you as a second class of citizen? That information about you could be shared in a way that information about me might not be? How many of you, like me, are the children of naturalized Canadian citizens? What would it have meant to you if your mothers and fathers had been treated in a differential fashion by your federal government? And I applaud the fact that Senator Senior has broadened the scope of her amendment to also address the issue of people who have been granted permanent residency, which is a protected status in this country. I think that there has been an erosion of a public cultural agreement in this country that we were a nation built by immigrants and refugees, a nation that prided ourselves in welcoming immigrants and refugees. And I think that malicious actors, not just within this country, but without, have been trying to pour an acid of hatred onto the foundations that have made this country great. And I'm deeply concerned that however well-intentioned the government may have been, that it may have even unconsciously, subconsciously been infected by the discourse of hatred that is driving so much public policy in this country. When I think back to that tweet I read into the record from Bruce McAllister, from somebody who works intimately with the Premier of my province, I'm left in despair. This country was not built on some fiction of Judeo-Christian values. This country was built on the values of every single Canadian who came here. Well, first of all, let me back up and say, this country was built on the foundation and the values of the First Nations, the Métis, the First Nations, the Inuit, the values that they embody in this country, that they embed in this country, the values of community, the values of sharing, the values that mattered when you were Indigenous peoples in this country who had to work together to survive in one of the harshest climates in the world. The values of Indigenous traditions and knowledge and spiritual teachings that are the bedrock of this country. And on top of that, we have built a foundation of people who have brought their values from around the world, whether those values were Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Sikh or Hindu or Jain. I'm not going to give you the list of everybody from the world religion textbook. But this is a country that has survived and thriven on the fact that we were able to incorporate the religious and moral teachings of all of the world's great religions and all of the world's great spiritual cultures. and to try to rewrite history with a view towards I must choose my words carefully here, an exclusionary vision, and a vision of Christianity that is contrary to, I think, the deepest of Christian values, fills me with dread for how we withstand the dangers without. And so I will be voting in favor of Senator Senior's amendment, which treats all Canadians as equal and which prevents the erosion of the kind of social contract upon which my Canada is based. Thank you very much.